In this exercise, we're going to be drawing a couple of ellipses using a combination of the ellipse tool along with the scale tool here inside of Illustrator. I've saved my progress as tracingtemplate.ai found inside the O5 Shapes folder. Make sure the drawing layer is active and the Shapes layer is locked. Also, what I'd like you to do is go up to the control panel before we draw anything and make sure that your fill right there is set to none, and you can do that by clicking on this fill icon and then choosing none. And you know, these are such squalid little tiny swatches. I'm going to go up to the flyout menu icon and I'm going to choose medium thumbnail view so that we have bigger swatches to work with, which makes it so that I don't have to click quite as exactingly inside of a swatch. Anyway, we want none for fill. That's the first guy. And we want black for stroke. And let's make those bigger as well by choosing medium thumbnail view and dragging the corner of the panel to expand it slightly. And next, you want to make sure your stroke is set to 4 point. So as long as those things are happening, you're in good shape. Then I'll go ahead and press the Enter key or the Return key on a Mac to hide that panel. And I'll select the Ellipse tool, which you can also get by pressing the L key, as in ellipse. And now I'm going to drag from this guide intersection right there downward in order to draw my ellipse. Now, a few things you can do as you're dragging with the tool. If you want to create a perfect circle, you press and hold the Shift key, like so. And you want to keep that Shift key down until after you release the mouse button. Very important, because if you release the Shift key at any point in time, then you go back to an elliptical shape, which may look pretty circular like this one here, but it's not quite a circle. Next, you can press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac if you want to scale your ellipse from the center outward, like so. And again, you need to keep that Alt or Option key down. If you release it, then you'll go back to the virtual corner-to-corner drawing style. If you press and hold the Control key as you drag, I love this one, or the Command key on the Mac, notice what you do is you drag exactly from that point, that guide intersection. See how the center of the arc of that ellipse remains trained on that point. So if you want to draw from one point to another and you want to keep those points exactly on the edge of your ellipse, then you press and hold the Control key or the Command key on the Mac throughout the length of your drag. None of these keys do you necessarily press before you start drawing. You press them after you begin drawing and you hold the keys down until you're done. And I love this one. I just have to say it can be exceedingly useful. This used to be, by the way, how the ellipse tool worked all the time inside of Illustrator, which I think is a better approach. Anyway, I'm going to press Control-Z, Command-Z on a Mac to undo that modification. Finally, as you're drawing an ellipse, you can press and hold the space bar to move it to a different location. And I apparently really want to go over here to the right side of my illustration, which invoked an auto scroll, as you saw. And then when you get done positioning the ellipse, go ahead and release the space bar and drag to scale the shape. All right, I'm going to go ahead and release my mouse button and then press Control-Z, Command-Z on a Mac to undo that modification. Let's scroll this guy back over by spacebar dragging. And I want you to draw from this guide intersection down to this one. Or if you're drawing in a different direction, I have to say I'm left-handed, so I don't always know what direction you right-handers work in. But whatever you need to do, just make sure that you're tracing the shape that you see before you now. And we get an ellipse that has a 4-point black stroke and no fill whatsoever, so we can see through to the template below. Next, what I want to do is create this second ellipse. See how we have this kind of crescent of a shape going here, in which one ellipse cuts a hole into another. And we're going to get that effect using the scale tool. We could draw another shape if we wanted to using the ellipse tool, but this is perhaps a more real-world way to work, and it gives you a sense for how to work with the scale tool. So I'll go ahead and click on this guy, and again, it's the scale tool right below the rotate or reflect tool here inside the toolbox. And you can get to it by pressing the S key as well. It's a great tool for stretching or scaling objects. And right now it's set to scale with respect to the center of the shape. So if I drag toward the center, I'll reduce the size of the shape. And if I drag away from the center, I will expand the size of the shape. So you're generally better off positioning your cursor a distance away from that transformation origin that we see in the center of the ellipse. That way you have more control. Because if you start dragging right there and you drag inward, notice that you reduce the size of the shape awfully darn quickly to nothing, as you see. And then if you drag outward, you expand the size of the shape until it's too big to fit inside your window anymore. Anyway, I'm going to press Control-Z a couple of times, Command-Z on the Mac a couple of times to restore the original size of that ellipse. The other thing you can do is reposition the center point, because after all, we want to scale the graphic with respect to its bottom. So I'm going to click on this bottom point in my graphic, like so. And it's hard to see because it's just a little tiny cyan target that's getting mixed up with the cyan guides. But I just moved that transformation origin, or reference point if you prefer, to the bottom of the ellipse. Now I'm going to drag exactly on the top point of the ellipse. This way we'll get some good snapping performance. So I'll drag that top anchor point downward like so until it snaps into alignment. See my little snap cursor there? Except the problem is right now I'm scaling the shape non-proportionally, and I want to scale it proportionally, but if I press the Shift key, that doesn't work for me. Because the Shift key is either going to give you a proportional resize or a vertical or horizontal only resize. And in my case, I'm getting vertical only. So that's no good. I'll have to press Control-Z, Command-Z on a Mac to undo that modification. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to position my cursor about 45 degrees out here, away from my transformation origin. So someplace out in this area. And I will begin to drag, and I'll press the Shift key to make sure I'm applying a proportional drag, which is very important here. And once the top of the ellipse appears to align with that next horizontal guideline that's running right there through the star, then I will also press and hold the Alt key, or the Option key on the Mac. So I have Shift and Alt down at this point. That would be Shift and Option on the Mac. Look at my cursor over on the right-hand side of the artboard. You can see that it's a double cursor indicating that I'm going to clone. So I was telling you, the Alt key either reverses the behavior of something inside of Illustrator, or it clones. And when you're dragging with the transformation tool, which includes either the arrow tools or the rotate tool or reflect or scale or any of them, then you create a clone on the fly. So keep Shift and Alt down or Shift and Option down, then release your mouse button, and you have now created a second ellipse like you see right here. In the next exercise, we're going to be joining these two shapes into a compound path in which one shape cuts a hole out of the other.